Good afternoon. Welcome to Optimum Live, episode 5. There's a poet and I didn't even know it. How good's that? My name is Chris Dawes from Visual PR, and we've got the challenge this afternoon to have a quick look back at yesterday's spring budget. I'm sure we've all got a variety of opinions on what happened, what didn't happen, what should have happened, what shouldn't have happened, etc. But we're going to try and pick the bones out of it. The good news is, as usual, that's not me trying to pick the bones, the blind leading the blind. It is genuinely, we've got some experts. So let me introduce, it's a real motley crew. We got 3 of them. Let's bring them in. Good afternoon, gents.
Hello.
Right. Let's work my way round and bear with us because we've got them all in the same building, all using the internet. So there might be the occasional moment we have a bit of fun with it. I think Ian's got a very slight lag, so we'll have that little delay, but we're going to have a good conversation. We got Jon Lacey, and I point the right direction. There we go. Jon Lacey, Finance Director, Mike Blaken, Accounts Director, and Iain Mason, Head of Legal. Greetings, gents. I mean, the whole idea of this show is, I'm going to go to you, Jon, because you're next to me, is that everybody's got, all of you have got a slightly different list of priorities, etc., to what has come out from the government.
Yeah, I'm a finance director of an accounting firm, so I'm very heavily influenced by anything financial, to do with companies. I think there's a few things I take away from it. I think there's a lot of political messaging in the budget yesterday, but I think we should look at the pure financial stuff that we'll look at later. I think that's probably what we need to focus this on and forget about the politics for now.
Yeah, that's gonna be a real effort from all of us, gents, that we've got to try and.
It will. I'm sure there'll be some questions.
Yes, there's a lot of politics in this one, without question. By the way, talking of questions and what have you, if you're watching live, whether you're on the YouTube, the Optimum Professional Services YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn pages, jump on and ask away any comments, any thoughts you've got, any advice or whatever it is from your perspective, anything like that. Put it in there, because I'll be able to put those up on the screen with your profile, name and photo and everything. And, the panel here will be able to have a look at those and answer those or respond to any comments you may have. And it could be useful what you have to say to anybody else that watches this now or in the future. So, Mike, I know that you and I caught up this morning at the boardroom networking, and you came running in from the car having digested the, how many pages? 14-page document.
I could say I read every word.
Your Honour. Yeah, so you read the executive summary of it, didn't you, really?
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to try and go through that a little bit more. But yeah, there's some headlines. There's as Jon said, there's some attempts to win some votes. His hands were tied to some degree. He's got to get money in. So he's just trying to be clever, but we'll see. We'll see what we've got.
Yeah, and I think there's a few stealth bits in there as well. And Ian, I know that your sort of comment at the beginning is going, I don't really know what we're going to cover, but there's the legal bits are sort of like wrapped in the finance bit here somewhat. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff on properties, for example, that they're trying to achieve something, and you come at it from a completely different angle from the other guys. So you've still got to digest everything they say, presumably.
I think that's true enough, Chris. I mean, there's been some obvious stuff on property. I think the stuff about the furnished holiday lets Economics on that, but also I think politically driven as well. Changes to the SDLT. So some of that's an interesting one. Removing one of the relief for multiple dwellings. I think there's possibly a bit of ticks on that. But then in terms of those dropping out the way, I think you look at the changes to the one of the headline rates on capital gains on property disposals dropping down from 28 to 24. So there's stuff out there as to how and what the marketplace is going to do with it all. I suppose that'll be back to John and Mike to sort of see and sit down with sort of clients as to work out if that's going to be much of a driver. I suspect there's probably other factors in the wider world that will dictate well everything settles on the back of it, Chris.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. I mean, John, coming back to you, picking up on a comment Iain made there, is that, and I can say this as a client of yours as well, is that there's a big onus on you guys to A, be aware of everything that has happened, plus B, what the impact is, and then C, formulate some maybe even advice for us guys. And that's where you kind of come in. It's probably quite a stressful day, budget day, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, as you're listening to the budget, every single time something new comes up, you're thinking about a specific client that relates to.
Oh, really?
Clients. So just rapidly writing stuff down, trying to jot things down and work out which clients it relates to. But then also, I mean, the onus is really on our clients as well to let us know what their intentions are, because often they might be looking to sell a property or buy a property or start a new business. But if we can know about that in advance, there's often a lot of tax planning measures we can do around that, and those obviously will be affected by what happened like yesterday. So the communication thing is really an important thing for us to understand what we can do with our clients. But as I said, as the budget is going through, there's constantly clients dropping into my mind. Okay, I need to talk to them about that. I need to talk about this thing, and a completely different client about something else. So it's it keeps you on your toes.
And I guess it's not always just the headline point. I mean, I think Iain was sort of almost alluding to it there as well, is it's not just a headline point. It's like, right, what is that affecting elsewhere? There is a whole spider web created by everything.
Absolutely. I mean, as Iain just mentioned about the change in the capital gains tax rate from 28 to 24. There's also that happens next year, but also next year there's a reduction in the capital gains tax allowance. So how those interplay with each other. So yes, you've got less tax, but it's on a higher amount of money. So there's a lot of things you need to sort of think about in the background. And there's quite a few things where they've dropped in. There was transitional things in process between now and when they kick in, maybe in a year's time. And we need to look about how those affect our clients, because some of them actually time bar even doing something beyond this April. If it's after this April, then it's assumed to be not applicable. So there's a lot of things you have to look at. There's a 91 page, I think it is, policy document which I've started making my way through, and that gives a bit more detail. But even in that, there's a lot of things where it just doesn't give you the full detail. It says that's still to be arranged at some point in the future. So,
well, yeah, I mean, I've got one of the headlines on business support. Full expensing for businesses will apply to leased assets in future. Quote, when affordable, draft bill to be published shortly. I mean, it's like, what?
Yeah. And that one we dropped on the end as well, the national insurance. My intention is to get rid of national insurance. Okay, so when we're going to do that and what's going to be replaced by? Because you can't just suddenly knock out national insurance at 8% as it is now to nothing. You've got to replace it with something. So my gut feel is that income tax is going to go up massively to compensate. We'll have one tax regime, income tax, not income tax, national insurance going forwards. But that income tax will go up to compensate. But we'll see.
So is that, I guess it's
that's on the never ever.
Yeah, I mean, is that a potentially good thing, or is that a bad thing, or is it it's nothing? None of that.
Let's face it. I mean, national insurance. I can't remember when national insurance was first came in. I think it was in early 1900s, and it was there to insure you for sickness or death, basically, or for retirement. And so it was a separate pot of money. But for decades now, national insurance has got the same pot of money as income tax. It's all just one pot that the government spends wherever. So the fact that we've got income tax and national insurance is an absolute fallacy. There's no reason for us having two different types of tax. It's just tax. So, so yeah. So,
19 what was that, Mike?
1911.
1911, there you go. Yeah, before my time.
Really?
Just.
Stop Googling, Mike. Other search engines are available. I mean, Mike, an aside question to you that's not really particularly important to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway, is that massive document. I always applaud you guys for getting this document and emailing it out to us on your list and everything to sort of break it down. Who puts that together?
I didn't sleep at all last night, honestly, just typing away.
Even your colleagues don't believe you. Yeah, I've got it up on my screen here as well.
It's the same. You look around most companies in the professional services, they've all released a document like this. It all comes from a form of central source that we pay to make sure that we can get this information out to the clients free of charge. So we pay for it. Yeah, we pay for it. Their return is they promise to deliver it by 6 o'clock in the morning, the morning after. And we make sure it's all set up with our people to get it emailed out to our client base. So yeah, it's something we do because we think it's important for clients to get that information, followed up by probably a couple of blogs and stuff that we'll pick out the meat of it with. I've got to meet with Joe probably this week or next about what the next blogs are. So we'll pull out some of the main bits and go, let's actually go to town on some of these bits. So it's just all that, trying to get all that information across to clients just to help out. More so like what Jon said is that we'll say something in mass to everyone and hopefully someone reading it will go, oh, actually, I'll pick up the phone and chat with them if they're not already having conversations with us. Yeah,
absolutely. No, I agree, and we'll be having meetings to discuss our future content episodes of these as well, and be as organised as possible. Blimey, the sun's just starting to come out. Let me just close that. Well, Mike, you're on the main screen. Oh, sorry, go on, Jon.
So one thing we are doing new this year is, again, it comes from the central source. They help us out, but we're following up the summary we've just sent out early next week with another document which actually has scenarios. So if I'm a business owner, then these are the things that are relevant to me. If I'm self-employed, these are the bits that are relevant to me, and it sets it out in a bit more detail. But that'll be coming out early part of next week.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, since you spoke, that now means you're on the main screen. So I'm going to start with you, Jon. Pick out one of the points and give us the headline and your thoughts into a deeper sense.
Well, I think the headline thing it's national insurance, isn't it? I mean, I saw a few comments about this. So basically what it is, national insurance has gone down by 2% for employed people from 10% down to 8%. It was previously reduced in the autumn from 12 to 10. So it's actually a 4% deduction from where we were at this point last year, but 2% in this budget. And for self-employed, they had a similar 1% deduction last autumn, and they got another 2%, so they got 3% down. So they're down to 6% national insurance on self-employed income. This. Well, I was saying we wouldn't get into politics. There was some politics involved in this because yes, there's a cut, but then the threshold at which national insurance comes in hasn't changed for several years now. So real terms, they're saying with inflation, it's not really a cut, but fundamentally, from where we were last year, everyone's going to be feeling a bit more money in their pocket from where we were last year, which is a positive. I think overall, yes, it's not necessarily cut, but you'll have more money in your pocket. So I think that's quite an important thing for people. As I said, the national insurance may be removed at some point in the future, but we'll see. I think one thing I did see, there's a bit of misinformation on Twitter on the back of the budget. People were saying, well, okay, but people who are earning much higher amounts of income, so in the higher rate band, they're going to be getting twice as much benefit from this as we are. But the critical thing is that the 2% reduction is only for the basic rate band. The basic rate band is for people who earn up to about £50,000. Yeah. Beyond that, yes, they do pay a reduced amount of national insurance. They always have done. That hasn't changed. So beyond £50,000, people will still be paying the same amount of national insurance going forwards as they currently are. So it's really it's affecting the basic rate band. People between £37,000 and £50,000 of, sorry, £12,500 and £50,000 of income.
Yeah, because there was a headline on, I think it was Sky News that I happened to see it on the app, that said that actually, I think it's if you earn 50,000 to 130,000, you're actually going to be worse off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's actually to do more with the £100,000 bracket, at which point you start losing your personal allowance. So then you start paying more tax at that point. I mean, at the £50,000 bracket, you are still saving on national insurance. You're saving the same amount as everyone else, 2% at the basic rate. I think it caps out the maximum you can save is about £750. They were talking about an average worker saving £450 yesterday, but what they put as an average worker is about a £35,000 salary. So it ranges from there to the 50,000, the 750 to 50,000 mark. Once you get to £100,000, you start losing your personal allowance. So you start paying income tax on more of your income, basically. So that's where you start losing out.
Okay.
And that's something that's been in for a while, and they've kept it. They're quite happy about that one.
Yeah.
Collecting the extra tax on that.
Are we happy about that?
It is what it is. It's been in place for a few years now, so we've just worked around it.
And talking about working around it with this thing, then, if and apologies if this is potentially a daft question, that if you were employing people and this change comes in, it's not until April.
Yeah.
And is that something that they have to make a change, or does the change happen somewhere else?
It happens in the payroll system. So for employed people, it happens in the payroll system. So if you have someone doing payroll for you, then they'll sort it out for you. If you do it through software, the software will update and do that for you. If you're self-employed, the national insurance only kicks in when you do a tax turn at the end of the year. So when you submit your tax turn by January, then you'll notice a reduction in the national insurance you pay on the next tax turn you do.
Fine. Okay.
Yeah.
And even better is that, like me, I use you guys to do my payroll. And so remember that Optimum can do that for you.
Absolutely right. One thing that did crop up that I've been looking at is the although the national insurance has come down, and so it's more beneficial to pay you get a bit more money in your pocket from salary. It does now during that question, that whole thing about whether it should be an incorporated company or not, whether it be incorporated or self-employed. With that in conjunction, this is where you're going back to where you're talking about things merging together. We've got a situation where we're in it this year. It's already happened as of the start of this current tax year we're in now. But for companies, the 19% corporation tax rate, which we've been enjoying for several years, has now changed to a mainline rate of 25%. That 25% is only where you got profits of over £250,000. If you've got profits of less than £50,000, you pay 19%, and in between, you pay a marginal rate of tax, around about up to 26.5% on that bit in between. So with the national insurance saving you've now got by being employed or by being self-employed, and the corporation tax increase if you've got over £50,000 of profits in the business, that whole question about should I be incorporated or should I be self-employed is a little bit more murky, and particularly where they brought in in this year, they brought in a new rule where if you've got associated companies, so if you've got more than one company in a group or owned by the same person, then that £50,000 limit I said, where you start up to which you pay 19%, if you've got two companies that are associated, you've now, that threshold is halved. So you start paying more than 90% tax at £25,000 profit, not £50,000 profit. So we really need to look carefully now when we set up new companies, and particularly in groups of companies, now whether it might be worth setting up that business as self-employed rather than as a company. Companies still do have the benefit of you can choose what you take out as personal salary, personal remuneration. So there's still that flexibility. But we do have to look at the tax a bit more carefully now. You
had to poke the beast, didn't you? Because that's my bane of my life at the moment. Yes. Because and I'm not going to harp on about this too long because it's not in the budget. It's something I was hoping they might change, because I know for me that feels like the majority suffer because of the minority, where people have been abusing the system, build up to that 50 grand profit and start a new business so that they're always missing the higher rate of corporation tax. But you're there going, I don't know, I've been missively called a serial entrepreneur and start another business that is not for those dodgy reasons. It's like, this is nothing to do with like Open Doors training that does public speaking training, visual PR that does these kind of shows and all the marketing PR that goes around it. They're not linked. And so it was like, oh, well, I want that to be a separate company. Now, because I've had this idea and set a company, I'm like, no, you're going to come unstuck if you set that up. If my wife, who's down as a director, is a physio and she goes, actually, I'm now getting out of the NHS and I'm setting up a private clinic, that now means it's got to be split between 3, and it's 33% for each of them. And yet they're not linked. How does that make sense?
Yeah, with the associated parties, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I think with the associate, where it's associated with a wife or a sibling or a parent or a child or whatever, there has to be some substantial link between the business. So you're using the same premises, using the same administrative function, you're in a similar sort of trade, have same sort of customers and suppliers. I think if you can make that clear break, my understanding is that that's not necessarily treated as an associate for the tax purposes. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Mike, that's my understanding.
Yeah, the default tends to be if you have, then it's likely to be linked, and then we got to prove that it's not. It's probably more to it. Yeah. So yeah, you probably can prove it's not, but you're gonna. There's a chance you got to do the paperwork for that. It's always been like trying to use real life situations and go, look, there's nothing to do with each other. They're completely separable. So therefore they're not linked. But you always got to remember that it kind of comes under the common law, Iain's kind of territory of terminology, the common laws, like the definitions of stuff. Is it that? Well, if it is, then you're open to interpretation on that side of it.
And a good opportunity to, sorry, and I haven't brought you in that much just yet. But I guess that this is where even all the financial side becomes very legal. When you listen to about those sort of like those thin lines between it, it's like walking a tightrope sometimes, isn't it? Oh, he did warn me.
Got a lag.
Oh, that's terrible.
Oh, no,
I'm guessing you've asked me a question which I've just not heard.
That's okay. It was. I'll give it one more go just in case. Ian, I was saying about how all of the accounts become very fine line, like the legal system, don't they? Where it like, well, surely logic should apply there, but we've got to be very careful, and the lines start getting a bit blurry, don't they?
I think I've got the gist of that. I mean, I think if you look at what you might think is common sense in terms of law or even aside from law, what you've got in the tax regime, yeah, there are some rules that don't seem to make much sense logically. One of the things that I deal with, which always comes as a surprise to commercial clients, is that you're basically paying tax on property sometimes. If you've got a commercial property, if you're buying, it's not on the it's on the growth, it's on the sum plus the VAT. So I've never quite worked out why that's the case. So yeah, the finer points do need exploring. I think it cuts both ways. It can give you an opportunity, but yeah, revenue and customs, I think, increasingly looking to get rid of the grey areas. I think partly, if I'm bringing it back to the obvious MDR, the removal of the multiple dwelling relief, I think that's partly, there's been an analysis done in what the fallout is going to be, but I think there's increasingly a number of I don't know how best to describe them, but I think a lot of people perhaps putting maybe not the most, and I think there've been a number of sort of promoters out there encouraging people to make claims that perhaps they shouldn't be. And so I'd certainly in at the moment the whole debate about popping up on my Facebook feed from Revenue and Customs, talking about tax avoidance, not doing it. Well, again, law, avoidance is one thing. Evasion is very, very much something different. But to sort of try and blur the line between the two of them doesn't really help people.
No, agreed. And I know, apologies to people watching the live there, is that I know that it's a bit tricky with Iain's connection. You might wonder why I persevere. That's because when we do these clips for the for Optimum social feeds, you'll find it's miraculously absolutely great because it's recording it local as well. So it's important that I let Iain get those key points over so that we can have those clips to put up a little bit later. There you go, as a little technical lesson. On that note, Iain, because what I think the best thing to do is that I will let you go. Yes, we did get some of it. Actually, that's not a bad idea. I like your point, Iain. Give that a go. Go next door with Mike. Give that a go. So Mike's going to have some company now. Let me remove that. Not same room. All right, but he's going to be on your mic, mate. It's okay.
Oh, well, actually come and sit in the chair with me. Oh,
correct,
dear.
Exactly. So, Iain, go and join Mike. That's fine. So apologies those watching the live show, bear with me. I want to just quickly put up, because thank you to Phoebe Hindlett. She's actually put the comment, she said that's correct. Now I think that's jumping back to where you guys were saying there can be some logic applied, but you'd have to prove it and all of that sort of stuff.
Just jumping back to what Iain was trying to say there. There's kind of harking back to what you were saying about things being sort of intermingled. So I know there are three things to do with properties that came up in the budget. There was the corporation tax relief on selling properties, and that you don't normally pay corporation tax on properties because if it's your home, because it's covered by a principal private residence relief. So it tends to be second homes and rental properties that you're selling. There's also the mix. So that's trying to promote someone if you want to sell a property to sell it in a better tax regime. There was the multiple dwellings regime relief loss, which is to try and stop people from not getting such good tax breaks and buying a property where it might have more than one dwelling linked in the same transaction. What was the other one? The other one was the furnished holiday lettings. Furnished holiday lettings have been treated as trades up till now and get very, very preferential tax treatment. But going forwards, they're not getting. A lot of that's been removed. So these are all policies that are put in place to try and get people to either not buy or to sell some of the properties they've currently as second homes or rental properties. Release those properties back into the market so that the general buyer who wants to buy their own personal home has more stock to choose from, and hopefully that will have the prices and everything. So that's where three policies came together to try and create one system. I mean, we were talking beforehand, and the government tried something nice before where they took away all a lot of the benefits of having a rental property business, and made it a lot less tax efficient. And that again was to try and get more properties on the market for people to buy. But the net effect of that wasn't what the government expected. It was you had bigger landlords buying a bigger portfolio from the people who were selling their small portfolio of rental properties. So whether or not these policies will have the same effect of releasing more to the market, we'll see. But if there are more on the market and there's people wanting to buy properties, then Iain's the person you want to speak to help you to buy or sell your property, because he's a great conveyancer.
Well, I mean, on that one, thanks, Iain. Now you've moved through and keeping Mike company much better. Just to sort of pick up, I think we got the key point of what you were saying earlier, but where John's gone on to that property things, is there some key points that have stood out from you, good, bad, or just for us to be aware of from your perspective on the legal side?
Not really. Well, no, nothing immediately jumps out. I mean, I think in common with a lot of the commentary that I've seen today, the gist of it seems to be that it's a bit of a non-thing. There've not been any radical changes. There've been some other bits and pieces. So there's not an awful lot that immediately jumps out. The trouble is my experience of sort of budgets and the tweaks that they make. It's what ends up in the legislation, because what's announced is not always what then transpires when the where the meat appears when they've done the legislation. Sometimes the detail. As a solicitor, I'm awful for saying this, but the devil's in the detail sometimes.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mike, while you're sat there as well, we've kind of all said that, again, we're deliberately ignoring the political posturing that's going on here because, you know, well, the reckoning we could be 2 months away from a general election being called or something like that. But it felt to me like there wasn't a lot in it, but you're still able to go and create a 14-page document. So there's still a lot of minutiae detail that we need to be aware of.
It's called marketing.
But then even I'm not doing it marketing, and I've made 2 pages worth of notes.
Yeah, there is. So, like, you break it down. There are some really major points in there. They've had to do something to try and look like it's positive. And so they've done some bits. Now, the one thing we haven't talked about, which I think is actually quite a big move that catches out a lot of people on PAYE who think they don't have to do a tax return because they pay tax on a pay slip and it's all good. And that's your child benefit, repaying some of that. So originally, if you had a PAYE salary, any husband and wife, let's say the wife earns more than £50,000 and they claim child benefit for the kids or kid, they have to start paying it back. Now, between 50 and 60k, you got to pay it back. On 3 kids, that's about £2,800 roughly, right? So in between that 50 and 60, there was an additional 28% tax for those people. People on PAYE didn't even know about it or chose not to. And then they would get a letter 4 years down the line saying they owe 10 grand. So that was always been a big bugbear. And you could have someone in the family earning £99,000 having to pay it all back, household income of 99 grand. You could have a husband and wife both earning 49 grand and they don't have to pay a penny of it back. So there was always a big bugbear over this, but what they've done is they've lifted the starting point of paying it back to 60,000, and you pay it back over a bigger scale. So between 60 and 80,000 pounds, you start to pay back this child benefit. So it starts to lift up quite considerably. And I've spoken to a lot of friends and stuff who are in that cusp of just being over the 50, between 50 and 60, that are now essentially, for those people, they can put a couple of grand back in the family pot. Whereas before they were having to set aside that money that they might have been using on the kids and stuff to actually to keep it rather than paying it back to the tax man. So I think that but again, you try not to look at it into the big picture, but look who that's affecting. You're generally affecting the PAYE income on that, on those earnings. But it is something that is quite a big turnaround.
Yeah, and I mean, does that? I think I heard you make a sort of like an overarching statement this morning, is that there might be some things that individuals might gain from yesterday's announcements, but for business. Now, I didn't quite catch whether you were suggesting either it was just something or nothing for business.
What I said.
Say what?
It might not have been audible what I said about what it happens to businesses.
It might have been that, but I mean, I was trying to work out whether you were saying it was just sort of like fairly neutral, whether it was actually not particularly helpful.
No, there's nothing other than the continuance of increased corporation tax. There's nothing really affecting a typical company, a typical trading company. There's no real effect to it. You could argue, now you could try and read into small print. So the biggest part of inflation at the moment is being driven through wages. Wages being increased greater than inflation, which is putting increased inflationary pressures. So you could argue that the reduction of national insurance means that employees have got more money, therefore less reliance on companies to give an annual pay rise. So there's going to be that. But again, most people, hopefully, who've been receiving annual pay rises, sort of inflationary pay rises, might be going, "Oh, I still would like that." So you can look at it in two ways and see which is a driver. But if the pay rise is slowed up for a little bit, that would just pull back the drive on inflation as well.
Okay.
But you get that takes me back to uni and looking at the economics of things, and it never seems to work what the textbook says.
No. And John, I can see that's got you chuckling as well.
Well, no, it's a couple of yeah. Well, I was thinking back to my economics part of my degree. Yeah, absolutely. But a couple of things of companies. There's the national minimum wage has gone up by about £1.12 across the board on all different age groups. It's based on bandings of age groups. So that's quite a big hike for some employers, particularly those who've got their staff on national minimum wage. So that's something to think about. So that's extra money they have to pay on potentially on top of a pay rise next year, just to keep them on equal with national minimum wage. The other thing for smaller businesses is the VAT rise. So the threshold at which you have to be VAT registered. It's not much of a rise. It's 85,000 to 90,000. So it's £5,000 more you can earn before you have to be VAT registered. I think I was on a very helpful seminar this morning and said that if it's interest linked, if it's inflation linked, it'd be more like £105,000 that threshold should be now, but it's £90,000. It's something. What I just need to be aware of is that those clients who might just be hovering around the 85,000 income bracket and might just about be thinking about I need to get VAT registered because I'm about to breach like 85,000. If we can do something to just divert some income away from their top line this year and keep it below £90,000, then we can keep them out of the VAT registration limit for a bit longer. So that's a couple of things, but that's primarily up in the smaller business rather than the sort of medium-sized, larger business.
And have they improved the systems on that though? Because I know Mike, it was I've just seen the shake of head, so I know the answer to that now. But Mike, it's going back the first episode we were chatting about it, which is great news. Great news that it has gone up, because you were saying is that they won't put it up. Everything else has gone up, but they're not putting that up. So they've tickled it up a little bit. So that's a step in the right direction, but it still takes ages. So you need to be ahead of the game. If you're getting close, get on it now.
Yeah, and some of it's been a bit mismatched still as an update on the VAT. There's some that have been flying out quick as you like, no problem. But we've got one now, again, still been 4 months. He's went over and we need to do it, just creating a bit of chaos. So it's still not a perfect system yet. And perhaps this is part of what they've done, is lifted it up to try and take a chunk of people out of needing to register, just to slow up the demand slightly on the system.
So what sounds like it sounds like good for us, but it's not. It's helping them. Yeah,
quite possibly. Again, depends which side of the glass you want to read it from.
Yeah, we can be cynical easily enough with all of this, can't we? What are the other points? I mean, I know I did a whole list of things. Mike, what's the next thing that's worth us just quickly touching on?
Let's have a quick nosy down. It's capital gains tax. I think we touched on it a few times, and I think we just drop onto that to make the important changes. So you sell something that's in a capital in nature. So let's say you sell some shares on the stock market. Okay, you're going to pay 10 or 20% CGT on that, depending on where that income falls. So let's just assume it's higher rate, so it's 20%. There's been no change if you sell your own company or you liquidate or close down your current company. You can still get what was originally entrepreneurs relief, now business property disposal relief, an annotation around that. Essentially get your 10% tax. So as anyone goes into business, limited company, they're all aware of this 10% tax. That's still there. But then what they changed a few years back was if you sold a residential property that wasn't your home, where Jon alluded to before, which was tax-free, but you sell a second home, a rental, a holiday home, another home you own that isn't your house, right, and you pay capital gains tax on, that was 28% for the higher rate, 18% for the lower rate. So it was a normal rate plus an additional 8%. They've now changed that and dropped that down, was it to 24%? So on that higher rate. So typically people selling a house who have got an income will fall in that 28% bracket. So 4% saving. So if you make 100 grand profit, you just save 4 grand the capital gains tax. So I've got quite a few situations where clients are looking at selling. We're going through some bits. Ian's doing the legal work on selling those bits, those properties. We've got it changes the outcome for them in a positive way, where there actually is quite a large reduction on their tax bills. They've still got a nice chunky tax bill, don't get me wrong, but there is a nice little saving in there that they can feel a bit warm inside about for once.
Okay.
And on that point with capital gains and second properties, going back to the point I was making earlier on about the furnished holiday lettings, if you've got a property which you're not renting out to someone consistently, but you're renting out as a holiday letting, I think there are specific guidances and thresholds you have to meet for it to be a furnished holiday letting, such as it can't be let out to any one person for more than 31 days, I think it is. That at the moment is treated more favourably than a rental. It's treated as a trade, so you can get, as well as getting some tax benefits of that. It also means that when you come to sell that property at some point in the future, you get entrepreneurs relief on it, which currently is a capital gains tax rate of 10%. Now they're looking at removing the whole FHL furnished holiday lettings regime completely from, I think it's April 2026. At that point, that property, which you currently can sell and only pay 10% corporation tax, capital gains tax on, will now fall under this new regime where it's 24% tax capital gains. So there's some planning to be made about timing of selling these properties. And I know the government is putting some anti-avoidance in there to say that, you know, the dates on which you agree the sale will determine which regime you fall into. So I need to look at that in a bit more detail.
Okay.
That'll go back to the old exchange or completion dates, which always is nice and confusing. What are we on? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's just pointing it out on our newsletter which bit it is.
Love it. Okay, so go on. Sorry, go on.
One of the things is people who've got savings. There's some movement on savings. So there's normally have a £20,000 annual allowance on ISAs. There's a new British ISA, which I think they're just investing in British companies. So that's another £5,000 you can invest in an ISA, which is tax-free income in the ISA, and it's but that's on top of the £20,000 you currently have. So you can £25,000 you can put into savings. And good spot, Chris. You noticed in the legislation there was this new British government bond that they're going to bring out. I think start the next tax year, which is a guaranteed interest for 3 years bond. Which you can invest into, but there's more details to come on when that's going to start and how much that's going to be at some point in the future. But that's another thing for people who've got cash to save.
Is that what used to be like many years ago when I was a kid? That I'm sure my parents put in something like that for us. Is that the one where it's got the prize draws as well, or is that totally?
No, you're thinking about the premium bonds. No, unfortunately, there's no winnings. Oh. It's a guarantee. It's basically loaning the government some money for 3 years. And they guarantee to pay you X amount of interest over those 3 years, and then pay you back the money at the end of it. So it's a safe investment, but you don't tend to get great interest rates on it. But it's a safe investment. Okay,
but they're still being creative and other bits and pieces. So that the new British ISA, I'd missed that part though. That is really sort of helping investing in, UK businesses, British businesses. And that's £5,000 a year that you're allowed to put into it, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So each year you can put an extra £5,000 in. So over years it amalgamates into quite a decent sum.
Okay, cool. I like that. That sounds good. Do we go into anything on this show on things like child benefit charges or anything, or is that not really relevant in this show?
Might touch on that briefly. That was the one about the the way they start taking the money back after a while. One thing that's those businesses who might have a few cash issues. There's the extension to the I think it's the what's it called, the
recovery
loan scheme. Recovery loan. Yeah, so there's an extension of that through to the end of 2026. So that basically gives companies up to £2 million they can draw down in government-backed loans. So the government guarantees 70% of that. The company's still liable for the whole loan value, but should things go wrong, the government will back 70% of that. And they're extending that scheme for another couple of years to 2026 for those companies that need it on the back of COVID and other issues.
Okay.
You've got to have a viable business plan. You've got to be a profitable business, but it's there for people if they need it.
But did you? Apologies, Mike, if I did completely miss this. This whole thing where, if one parent earns above 50 grand, a household system. I think I saw that it was moving away from. I can't remember which way it was punishing, but single parents versus having two parents or whatever. That they're trying to level the playing field or something.
Well, it's on an individual income, but so they're essentially that whole plan that you could say is a negative against having one person earning, one person not. But that's another thing where if we bring in the fact that they're bringing in the childcare for not just the 3 hours for 3 and over for children. It's a lot. They're bringing it in for a lot younger and staging that in. But it's the idea to try and get more people back to work. So they've seen that there's a lot of vacancies for jobs, lots of people trying to hire, but not enough people to fill the hours. So what they're trying to look at different ways of making it more incentivized for that other person, the stay-at-home mum, stay-at-home dad, to come out and go to work. And so they're just trying to take away those typical sort of barriers to going to work. So the childcare's one. And I've got quite a few friends who actually will open up the doors for them to be able to go to do more hours at work. It's just trying to get as natural with these things, the care providers working with the governments to get what that looks like so they can actually offer it. Some of it's supposed to be coming out next month, and I know a friend who's going, they still don't know what they're getting. So there's a natural lag between, and that was something that was released, I think, in the autumn statement. So it's just, again, that thing of they got these ideas, they got to try and just get them out there as quick as possible. So it works.
And I'm not sure whether this is to Mike or John, really, but they made a point of saying no change to full fuel duty with 5p cut announced in March 22 still in place. So they're actually making a headline, I'm reading that, as going, yeah, we haven't reversed that. Is that basically how I read that?
Exactly that. They did that with corporation tax as well last year when they said we're not increasing corporation tax any further. So that's it. But on that one, we're talking about duty. Let's talk about the most important one here out of all of these things. Beer and cider's not going up. Come on, that's that.
What are you worried about beer? You can get cider tax.
No. Cider's just for the summer now. I've gone to be a beer in the winter. Right. Beer in the winter.
And that says that the alcohol duty free is extended until February 25. So
we've got the same price beer for a while.
So that's another one where they're sort of like blowing the trumpet of something they've announced previously, going, great news, we're keeping that the same. But we'll settle for that one. We'll be happy.
We'll take it. Let's not lock that one because they could change it any moment.
We'll go with that. Whilst you're on something like the alcohol side, is just to sort of reiterate, is that duties to be introduced on vaping liquids for the first time, not until October 2026, though.
Yeah. Again, they got to work out how to impose it.
Wow. Yeah. True.
I think they put this new legislation, to try and stop people from smoking. Going forwards, was it 14-year-olds now will never get a chance to smoke. But what they don't say is that they actually generate a lot of income into the treasury by the duty on cigarettes. So people moving to vaping, they need to replace that somehow. So they're going to be putting duty on vaping, but they're going to be a one-off, as I said, a one-off additional duty on cigarettes, so that people don't just move from vaping back to cigarettes again. But they've got to try and get that money in somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that one-off tobacco duty increase will be at the same time, October 2026 as well. Yeah. We've covered that. I did bring this up earlier. So this statement they made, full expensing for businesses will apply to leased assets in future when affordable draft bill to be published shortly. John, I'm guessing that's one for you. Ignore it's going to come in at some point, but what actually does that mean in English?
Simply kind of what it says at the moment. You can get full expensing on any new assets you buy. As in you physically actually pay cash over and get them into the business. Currently with leased assets, you don't get that full expensing. So it's something they're going to do. We don't know what it's going to be or when it's going to come in. So at the moment, I can't say an awful lot about it, to be honest with you. But I do look forward to that happening, so we can actually get that benefit. And
apologies, I'm sure I'm alone. The other viewers will know what it is. What does full expensing mean? What does that mean?
So at the moment, there's a regime with annual investment allowance where you can get £1 million worth of assets purchased, and you get basically 100% allowance for that. So for those people who do profit and loss accounts and for their businesses, you don't put the cost of any new assets you buy through your profit and loss account normally. What you do is they go into your balance sheet, which is not a statement that you get assessed for in tax. And then when you do a tax return, they look at your profit, and then you get an allowance, which is a percentage of the value of the asset as a deduction from your taxable profits. At the moment, there's an AIA, an annual investment allowance of £1 million you can spend, but that for companies gets spread amongst the group, the number of companies in your group. It's not an even spread. You can choose how that gets spread, but it's it's £1 million in total you can spend in the group. This full expensing is for companies only. It's not for self-employed, but it's an opportunity to actually. It's a similar sort of thing. Basically, you get a full 100% allowance on the value of the assets you buy in the year you buy them. So it's an additional allowance basically on new assets.
Okay. So it's driven very much on those high asset driven companies. So it's not your average company who's spending more than £1 million on assets on top of everything else. So they're the ones who, when they buy a machine, it's 500 or 600 grand, and they happen to buy 2 or 3 in a year, right? I think in the autumn statement when they released it, they said 95% of businesses are covered by the current capital allowance rules to get full relief. This just affects the additional bigger 5%. So it's a complete niche. We've got a couple that it's positively affected. But it's one of those things. They made a big headline on it back in the autumn statement, but actually, average Joe with a typical company won't feel the change of that as well.
Okay, fair enough. Final couple of points before we wrap up this show, and I'm going to put this to Iain because you've been getting away with it this time. I will get all of your thoughts on this, I'm sure, as we have done. But they say, Office for Budget Responsibility sees inflation coming in below target within, quote, months. Do you believe that, Iain?
Loaded question.
Yeah.
It depends what you read. I mean, there's always, what is it? Lies and statistics. Past performance is no proof or guarantee as to what the future may hold, etc., etc. Forgive my cynicism, but I suspect some of the wider factors, again, without alluding to the P word that we've been avoiding all of this session. I think with the inflation, trying to narrow it down, there's so many factors that come into it. I think that you can't really tell. I mean, look, what was the stuff we've seen today, local to home, nationwide, putting the offer in for Virgin Money? The impact that's going to have on, from my perspective, the economy in terms of mortgages, the availability of the same. What's the appetite? What's inflationary? Are house prices going up? I've seen some comms earlier to say house prices have been the fifth monthly successive rise. Figures going back to where they were in 2022. Talk about inflation. What are the drivers, Chris? I'm not sure I know. Probably more than I am now.
And I always find it intriguing because then you start hearing where they're saying, the prices are going up, the activity is going up. You go, well, that's good. I feel buoyant. And it's like, yeah, but it's pushing inflation up, so everything's going to be tightened. I mean, I'm sure we've all noticed that quietly all the fuel prices are going back up quite high, aren't they? So, and no one's, they're kind of going, quick, keep going. No one said anything yet. Keep going. That's what it feels like at the forecourts. That impacts inflation. I mean, let me go to you, Jon, as the finance director. With two things. Let me bring in your comment on that about inflation, but also that they've said they predict the UK's GDP growth to be of 0.8% in 24 and 1.9% in 2025. I mean, that sounds encouraging, but
it is. I mean, generally, we have found with our clients that they are growing. So the economy is good for small businesses at the moment. But I think let's not forget that the reason why we're in a situation at the moment, and with inflation being so high, is that there's things that we don't know about. We had COVID. We had the war in Ukraine. I don't know if the war in Israel and Palestine is affecting things at the moment, in some way. But it's all these things that happen which we have absolutely no control over affect us domestically. So these are predictions. Whether they come true or not, I don't know. I mean, there's again, without using I'm going to use the B word, the politics word, but I think there was a couple of things where the current government were called out on a couple of promises they made, which didn't come true. The fact of the matter is, we've had a crazy few years between when those promises were made and now, and the things we couldn't have anticipated. We don't know what's around the corner. So I think, if I look at it at the moment, I think, those statistics could be right, but we just don't know.
And I guess we've got to take the positivity from it, haven't we? I mean, I genuinely feel that I mean, go to the worst case scenario, recessions or whatever, can be self-fulfilling prophecies. I've seen a lot of bullishness out there with the business, and I think actually, Mike, it's good to come to you on this, because I know that one of your key passions is not just startups, but particularly growing businesses, working with them. Is that we have to look at those statistics, look at how everything is and the mood is, and go, do you know what? Let's take all the positivity out. And we'll ignore that P word, as Iain says. Just let the P word go, and just go, do you know what? I'm going to run with that. I'm going to go headlong. The self-fulfilling prophecy comes when people go, oh, well, it's not worth it. It's all bad. And you work half as hard and wonder why you get half as much business in.
Yeah. I think you've got to remember as well, it's you hear lots of people say it. You got to just deal with what you can control and what you are in charge of.
Yeah.
We were both at the Theatres thing the other week. And his big thing is just worry about the things you can control. Leave the things you can't, because it's just wasted effort. So for most businesses, you can't control what inflation is. You can't control the external market. You can just deal and react with what you've got. So I think for most businesses, you just got to get to a point where you are flexible to move. So if it does change, you can adapt and move with it, rather than sat there just going, oh yeah, no, if I could have done, that would have been better for me. But actually just being a little bit more on it, having the conversations, knowing what's coming up. Like we get to hear different things about the market, but I could speak to 12 different trades and I'll have 6 to 10 different stories about what the world looks like. So again, what's affected to them. One guy might have a really good contract with a builder and he can't build enough. And I've got another guy over here who's going, I haven't had the phone ring for 3 weeks. And but they both could be fitting bathrooms. They could be both doing extensions. They could be both doing £250,000 extensions, the big stuff. But it's just, so you can't even worry about all that big market. You can just deal with what you've got.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I always remember, think back to many years ago, a stand-up comic doing a set where it was like saying, oh, house prices have plunged and it's now below what my mortgage level I took out for it. What the heck am I going to do? I'm going to live in it. I don't intend to sell it for a loss. I'm going to live in it, and you kind of go with what we're in. So, I'm sure I know that's oversimplifying it somewhat, but it's that kind of principle. It's like, that's what we're given. Okay, right. I think we've largely got to the end. I'm going to whip round all three and just double check to see if there's anything I've missed out or any final comment you want. Iain, I'm going to start with you. Any final comment? If there isn't, that's fine. But any final comment or anything I've missed out?
I suppose wait for the small print when it all comes out proper, just in case there's a sting in the tail with it all. But as I said, I'm a solicitor, so I always say stuff like that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You love the small print, don't you? But
yeah, I don't say I love it. It's just important.
No, yeah. when does that small print come from all of this then?
It will be, I think, the stuff that, again, using the MDR, there'll be a tweak to the Finance Act, and there'll be stuff that will probably be coming out in the Finance Act and the sort of various regulations, adjustments to this sort of the underlying legislation. Probably will be through the secondary, through the statutory instruments, the secondary legislation.
Okay. The Mike, go to you as well. What, any final comments or anything I missed out?
No, just keep listening to us and talking with us with the changes and see how it affects. We'll be in charge. We'll be dealing with most of it and in front of it, but just get clients and people just talk to us. We'll see what's going on.
Okay. And last but by no means least, Jon.
Similar. I mean, we deal with all sorts here, so there'll be things we haven't touched on today. I know I've got a couple of clients in particular be interested in non-dom bits they're talking about, which isn't really for today because it doesn't affect most people, but it's important. So if anything in the budget affects you, then just feel free to give us a shout, and we'll happy to chat it through with you.
Yeah, especially if there's questions or anything that doesn't make sense, have a chat with you guys.
Yeah, and if anyone's not got a copy of the our updates and the tax tables coming out that next week, just make sure they drop us an email with it, and then we'll add their details on.
As if by magic, that's the one, isn't it? They send it to marketing@optps.co.uk. Drop a line to that one, and you'll be able to get yourself. And I do recommend it. I mean, it's a fabulous document that I'm not going to pretend I've read it yet. It's there for me to have a look through. Nicely, sort of like cleanly broken out into the different sections. So drop a line to marketing@optps.co.uk. Okay, I think that brings us to an end on that. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you all three of you, especially Iain. I know you had to battle through some tech issues, which does mean I'm about to send you an email with a link I'm going to need you to go on because we need to complete the upload, I'm afraid to say, but we'll sort that out after this in a minute. Mike, Jon, don't go anywhere, but thank you guys for coming on.
Cheers, Chris.
Thank you.
No problems.
Thanks.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. Keep your eyes peeled. Episode 6 next month. We'll be working out the content for that. I think, actually, Mike and I already know what the content is, but I've forgotten what it is now because we nearly did it last week, didn't we? But I've forgotten what it is. Can you remember?
We'll surprise everyone.
Yeah, we'll surprise, including us. It's fine. But keep your eyes peeled, and all the clips of this will be up in due course as well. But thanks for watching Optimum Live. Cheers all.